Mixon, professor of political science at Elmhurst University.
Thanks for being with us.
Glad to be here.
So the Illinois Policy Institute says our state averages one public corruption conviction every week. That makes us the most corrupt big state in the country. So talk about how big a deal Madigan's conviction is in all of this.
It's a very big deal. This is a sad and disappointing bookend to Speaker Madigan's political career. Before his conviction, he was the longest serving legislative leader of any state or federal body in U.S. history. And he certainly was considered the most powerful politician in our state. And he used his power and length of time in office to build a political machine that controlled Springfield and most of our state. This power also resulted in personal, financial, and political gain, and ultimately his downfall. And you're correct, there is a persistent culture of corruption in Illinois. Illinois ranks third for federal corruption convictions per capita, just behind the District of Columbia and Louisiana. Chicago and Northern Illinois rank first.
Well, when you think about this, people often would jokingly, but refer to him as the governor or, the velvet hammer. Do you think it's changing the way politics is now operating in our state? Because there's been talk that even though his reign is over, the system he put into place still exists.
You're correct. And while we have had some ethics reforms, legislation enacted since his conviction, there's still much more to do. Ultimately, because of corruption in Illinois, we all pay a $500 million corruption tax in Illinois. And this results in reduced economic growth because a high level of public corruption can decrease investment and limit economic growth. And importantly, I think we all need to recognize that corruption leads to an erosion of public trust, and it ultimately harms our confidence in state and local government. Now, there's a long list of things we can do in Illinois to reform our ethics system, and I'm not sure you have the time for me to go through this list, but I'd be happy to.
Well, what are some of the big points on that list? What are the teachable moments for other politicians out there?
I think one of the first things that I would do is ban the use of campaign funds for a politician's legal defense. Both Madigan and Burke had huge campaign war chests that enabled them to have the best possible counsel and defense attorneys. I would close the revolving door between lawmakers and lobbyists. Right now, if you're a state legislator, you can become a lobbyist the day the legislative term ends. So I would push for some sort of cooling off period. Currently, there's legislation in front of the General Assembly that would require a 3-year cooling off period. I would also prohibit state legislators from holding paid lobbying positions with local governments. We could end partisan gerrymandering. We could move to an independent redistricting commission. We might consider ranked choice voting options to decrease the power of both Democratic and Republican machines in Illinois. We could work with the Inspector General. We could require financial disclosures. It's a long list.
Yeah. Yeah, and the way that things get done in the state, it seems like it would be a list that would be almost impossible, though some do sound ideal. I have to ask you, because you brought up his name, Burke. Madigan's 83 years old. He's considered an elderly inmate. How much of his 7.5-year sentence do you think he's actually going to have to serve? Because former Alderman Burke only did 9 months of his 2-year sentence before he got to go to home confinement. You think that could happen for Madigan as well?
Absolutely. Under federal rules, Madigan should serve 85% of his sentence, which should work out to about 6 years. But there's something called the First Step Act, which would allow elderly inmates to request placement in home confinement. So in reality, Madigan could be home much sooner.
In reality, could his conviction be overturned? What's the likelihood here? We know his attorneys are appealing his case. We're not expecting oral arguments until 2026. but 10 federal corruption charges. I mean, what's the likelihood that his conviction could be overturned or he would be retried?
You know, appeals take a very long time, and ultimately, I think it's unlikely. We can look back in history, both Governor George Ryan and Rod Blagojevich tried to appeal their cases. They were both unsuccessful. I know that Madigan's attorneys asked for him to be at home out of prison until he appealed. I think they were really trying to run the clock out, given his age and the fact that appeals just take years and years to happen.
Okay. Professor Connie Mixon with Elmhurst University, thank you so much for joining us and helping us to break this down. We appreciate your time.
Thank you.